Welcome y'all to another episode of the Frustrated Chicago Sports Fan. We're not going to just talk about Bears football
The Bears.
or Bulls basketball. We're going to talk about the biggest stories of the 2025 NFL season, dating back to April when Shedeur Sanders slid down in the draft for what many had mocked to be a first round pick, all the way to the fifth round pick. The stories about him being mistreated, racism, America being afraid of a brash black man. This situation is extremely layered. Systemic racism is deeply rooted in the foundation of America. I will go to the top of the hill and I will stand on that hill and die on it. And there's indisputable evidence that I stand with, concrete evidence from black people's initial time landing in this country till recently. And this is not just ingrained in the system of business or just everyday social interactions. This trickles down to sports. Let's be honest. I'm an 80s baby. I've been watching football since I was small. I've been playing football for years. One of the things that I noticed from a young age was the lack of black representation at quarterback. The only quarterbacks I remember growing up in the early 90s was Randall Cunningham, Warren Moon, Andre Ware, and Rodney Peete. I'm not ashamed to say that I rooted for all of them. And of those guys, Rodney Peete and Andre Ware were just guys, to be honest with you, barely guys. They were journeymen. They were backups. And they played on a team that was a rival of my favorite team, the Chicago Bears. I rooted for Randall Cunningham and Warren Moon from afar. They had good careers. Warren Moon is in the Hall of Fame. There just wasn't a lot of representation. And it brings me back to Shedeur Sanders and the controversy. So when Deion Sanders took the job at Colorado, now, mind you, I grew up a big fan of Deion Sanders, as many kids of that era did. I had the Deion Sanders poster on my wall, and he never played for the Bears. In fact, he broke my little Bears heart when I was maybe about 9, 10 in the playoffs in 1994 when he played for the 49ers and they beat us bad. I was a fan of Deion Sanders, though. He was flamboyant. He was flashy. He had a personality and a charisma that just attracts people. So when he went to Colorado, I jumped on that Deion Sanders bandwagon. I jumped on the Colorado bandwagon. I was rooting for Shedeur. I like Shedeur Sanders. I don't like his fan base. When I evaluate players, I tend to go into the film review. I want to see the bird's eye view. I want to look at their competition. It's different when you're watching a game as a fan and when you're evaluating talent. So I always felt like Shedeur would play on the next level. I think even as in my casual observations, I could tell that. But around draft time, when I reviewed the film, I didn't feel like he had the athleticism, the arm talent, the ability to quickly read defenses to make him excel at the next level. Things he was doing were not sustainable for an NFL starting quarterback because he simply, I didn't see him being able to elude edge rushers by the time that he did at Colorado. Lots of little things. I expressed those things online. A lot of you pushed back, and I get it. We as black people have been mistreated. We tend to get the short end of the stick. We face discrimination at every level of business. And a lot of you probably thought that Shedeur was facing that. I wholeheartedly disagree. Looking at Shedeur, I think he definitely isn't a first round talent. I thought at draft time, top of the third, maybe end of the second. And that being the case because teams are desperate for quarterback talent. You can't win games in this modern NFL without good quarterback play. I don't care how good your defense is. Cleveland now. I don't care how good your running game is or running back. Cleveland now. You need a quarterback that operates in the top half of the league. And if you want to have any sustained success, you better have an elite quarterback, minimum franchise quarterback. You need that. I compared Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders' stats. I think people misinterpreted that. I don't think Dillon Gabriel is a franchise quarterback either. But when you compare the numbers, after 5 starts, I showed that Dillon Gabriel threw for 7 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 937 yards. 80 quarterback rating with a 59.5% completion percentage. And Shedeur Sanders, 6 touchdowns and interceptions, which is now 7 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. 1,103 yards, a 68 quarterback rating, and a 55.1 completion percentage. I didn't put up Jackson Dart's numbers. I didn't put up Cam Ward's numbers, Tyler Shuck's numbers, or Quinn Ewers' numbers. And each of those guys are rookies, and this is indisputable. We're talking stats, even eye tests. It doesn't look good from. I don't want the bar to be set so low for Shedeur that look at excuses and point the fingers at everybody else for Shedeur's lack of play. I've heard things from Jerry Jeudy, from Kevin Stefanski, to the Browns gave him the wrong wristband, which was only for a series, or to that he's didn't get the first team reps in training camp. Well, the newsflash, those guys I named besides Cam Ward, they didn't get first team reps in training camp either. They were the backups. And in this NFL, with the collective bargaining agreement and the amount of time you have to practice, you really realistically do not have time to give your backup quarterback first team reps and a lot of practice time beyond training camp. Once you get to the season, you're rolling. Once you get to the last couple of weeks of training camp, you've decided who your starting quarterback is. You don't have time to split reps. You could do that in mini camp maybe, and the Browns don't have the luxury of doing that because the Browns are stupid, and the Browns were splitting reps between Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco for what reason, I don't know. I'm not excusing the Browns organization. They are a failure. But them being a failure is not the reason why Shedeur Sanders is not a good quarterback. I don't think it matters where Shedeur got picked. In fact, I think one of the good things is Shedeur's getting a chance to play, because there's a lot of teams where he would never get the opportunity to play. If you look around the National Football League, most teams have established quarterbacks, or they have young quarterbacks that are trying to establish themselves. There was no path for Shedeur playing and starting in the NFL in 32 teams besides the Cleveland Browns. In conclusion, it's not a surprise to me that the majority of white, MAGA-looking supporting people are rooting against Shedeur. It's not a surprise to me that the black people are rooting for him. I have no problem rooting for Shedeur. We just have to be logical. There is nothing statistically about Shedeur that looks good. Not even promising. He's struggling bad. He's not reaching the bare minimum of starting quarterback play in the NFL. Not statistically, not an eye test, not in any of the films I've reviewed. And I've reviewed a lot of shots. It's not good. The decisiveness isn't there. He takes a bunch of sacks. He's not accurate under pressure. And yeah, I get it. Maybe he could operate better in a clean pocket. But let me tell you something. There's 80 quarterbacks in and around the league that can operate in a clean pocket. Clean pocket is not something you're going to get the privilege of as a quarterback in the NFL. There's pressure. Your offensive lineman can't simply hold people at the line of scrimmage for seconds. You're going to have to move off your spot. Shedeur's not good at that. And a lot of the dialogue and discourse I see is maybe if he had a better coach. Kevin Stefanski is the 2-time coach of the year. I also see Kevin Stefanski comments of silly conspiracy theories that he's sabotaging Shedeur. Kevin Stefanski has been building his coaching rep since before Shedeur was born. It took him decades to get to the level of a head coaching job where he's getting the privilege of earning 8 figures. Let me tell you, there is no possible way Kevin Stefanski is carrying on an ongoing feud that his father-in-law has with Shedeur's dad and to sabotage Shedeur. That makes zero sense. Why would that man risk his millions? Why would that man risk his job security for that? It also doesn't make sense because I watch Cleveland Browns games, unlike most of you. And I can say they're not well coached. No, they're not playing good. The culture is bad. Whatever magic Kevin Stefanski had years ago, he doesn't have it anymore. But I can tell you one thing with absolute certainty. The game plan they have installed for Shedeur Sanders is absolutely there to protect him. It is a run-heavy, play-action, simplified offense. I also watched the Steelers-Browns game. Yes, they won. Stop saying it was because of Shedeur. Let's be honest, people. Shedeur led them to 13 points. He had a decent first half. He had another game in which he threw more interceptions than touchdowns. He has had 3 of those games this year. Go and find me a quarterback that has played under 10 games that has multiple games of more interceptions than touchdowns. Shedeur is in a class by himself. Rookie or not, bad team or not, that is unacceptable. And I watched that Brown Steelers game. They were afraid to throw the ball in the second half of Shedeur. They relied on defense, they relied on the run game, and they relied on that idiot on the other side of the field, Aaron Rodgers, being too scared to stand in the pocket and throw the ball because, as he said before the game, he didn't want Myles Garrett to break the record on him. But that's another subject. Aaron Rodgers' ego was so huge that he would rather go into a do or die game the next week and risk the Steelers' playoffs chances than to have a record broken on him, which is unbelievably stupid. That's crazy that he would even bring it up before the game because it's not your record. It's not your time, bro. Nobody is going to care that Myles Garrett broke the record on you. They're going to care about his 22 and a half sacks. You are a footnote. Unless you're like the other idiot that came from Green Bay and you lay down like a pansy and allow somebody to sack you. That's the only way we're going to remember the record. But again, another story. So in conclusion, not going to apologize for my evaluation because I'm right. And in most things that I put on air, put on print, I'm right on. This is not me being arrogant, but this is true. I watch this game every Sunday for the past 30 something years. You're not going to win debates with me if you're a casual. And you're not going to win the debate on me with Shedeur. And I wish Shedeur the best. But I don't see this ending in anything other than a journeyman quarterback or a bridge quarterback. And to be honest with you, Shedeur is already a success. That's what you are doing. There's 32 starting quarterback jobs in the world, and there's 8 billion people. He's one of 32 people in the entire world to start Sunday after Sunday. There's only 70 to 80 humans that can play quarterback in the National Football League. Shedeur is already a success. We don't have to make excuses. We don't have to point the fingers. We can accept what Shedeur is, and that's okay. Speaking of quarterbacks, one of my favorite quarterbacks in the National Football League for the past few years, and it's because as a Bears fan, I sympathize with the Buffalo Bills and how they've suffered. I watched them in the 90s go to 4 straight Super Bowls and lose 4 straight times. So I always had a special place. And Buffalo Bills fans are like Bears fans. They're loyal. Whether their team wins 10 games or 2 games, they're there. They're complaining, they're cheering, but they are where they need to be at the end of this year is the Super Bowl. Make no mistake about it. There's no Pat Mahomes in this playoffs. There's not going to be a Lamar Jackson. Not that he really got in the way of what they were doing anyways, but there's no juggernaut in the AFC. You guys are the veteran team. You guys are the one who's been there before, who's been to the edge. Everybody else is babies. Bo Nick's been there last year. He said hi and bye to the playoffs. Drake May has never been there. CJ Stroud has been there. But the Texans are a relatively young team. But they got a few veterans. But they're not the favorites. Let's be clear. They're not the team with the pressure on them. If the Texans lose in the first round, nobody's going to bat an eye. If the Buffalo Bills lose in the playoffs again, that's trouble. That's trouble for McDermott. That's trouble for Josh Allen's legacy. I think Josh Allen's coming up on year 8. This is year 8. There's no Super Bowl rings. There's no AFC championships. That has to change. This is your opportunity. You can't go into the playoffs and lose to Bo Nix or Drake May or CJ or Justin Herbert or whatever is left of Aaron Rodgers and the Baltimore Ravens or Trevor Lawrence. The pressure is on the Bills, and there's no excuses. I know this isn't the most talented receiving core. I know that they've had injuries on defense. I know they had their struggles, ups and downs, but they are the team that has the most playoff experience in the AFC. It needs to manifest. I'm holding Josh Allen accountable, and to be fair, Josh Allen he's went out and balled in the playoffs. The excuses for Josh Allen and the Bills, they have to end this year. Speaking of another legendary quarterback, 2 weeks ago we saw Pat Mahomes go down with an ACL injury. And that got me thinking about the Pat Mahomes dialogue. Because see, about 5 years ago, we saw Pat Mahomes and Brady go at it in the Super Bowl. And it was billed as the GOAT versus the young GOAT. And the year after that, I believe the Chiefs did win the Super Bowl. They beat the 49ers twice. They beat the Eagles one time after that. They lost. And everybody has pretty much maintained that Brady is the GOAT, but Pat Mahomes is coming for him. I'm not so sure that's true. Peyton Manning is a four-time MVP, two-time Super Bowl winner, all pro many times. And in the 2000s, he actually was being named to all pro teams above Brady. And for a while, Peyton Manning was considered the GOAT. Looking at Pat Mahomes' last three, maybe 4 years, he hasn't dominated at a GOAT like level. There hasn't been GOAT like seasons. There hasn't been an MVP. There hasn't been a dominant statistical season. Sure, they've won two Super Bowls. It was a defensive team. With Pat kind of playing game manager, he hasn't been cracking 30 touchdowns. In fact, he's been amongst the league leaders in interceptions. He's been in bottom 10 in completion percentage. And I understand the Chiefs lost Tyreek Hill, but if you're going to convince me you're GOAT, you have to elevate the guys around you and still maintain a level of play. Tom Brady, he didn't even win a Super Bowl with Randy Moss, but he broke records with Randy Moss. And when Randy Moss left, he continued breaking records. He continued having dominant statistical seasons. Tom Brady had great seasons with Wes Welker, Troy Brown, Rob Gronkowski, Mike Evans. He did it with an assortment of different players. He made it work. Corey Dillon. Guys came and went. Tom Brady's level of play stayed. I'm not sure I can say the same thing about Pat Mahomes. There's been the drop off without Tyreek Hill. There's been the drop off with Travis Kelce. So before I put Pat Mahomes on that level with Tom Brady, I need Pat Mahomes to accelerate beyond the level of John Elway, be above Steve Young. I don't think he's getting that conversation. And after tearing the ACL, and we're in the post 30 season, we don't know if Pat is going to ever get back to the dominance that we seen from 2018 to 2021. We don't know if he's going to have those special seasons. And if he doesn't have those special seasons, then why are we calling him the young GOAT? Why is he ahead of the Peyton Manning or the Joe Montana, who I feel is right there with Tom Brady? That's a four-time Super Bowl winner, multiple MVP, dominated the 80s, was very good in the 90s, but had a decade of dominance. I haven't seen a decade of dominance out of Pat Mahomes yet. I see maybe the most physically talented quarterback to ever play, but it's into at least a couple more titles, and it's got to manifest into the dominant statistical seasons. And truth be told, if you look at the last playoff run that they just had, the last two, he wasn't dominant in the playoffs. He managed the game, and managing the game is fine. Tom Brady did that early in his career. But again, I'm looking at Pat Mahomes for the level of GOAT, and it's not quite measuring up.
Thanks for listening to this latest episode from the Frustrated Chicago Sports Fan Channel. Don't matter if you listen to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or watch it on Twitch or YouTube. Make sure you like, subscribe, share with a friend, hit the notification bell so you never miss a drop. And to all the guys from Chicago, we say three things: bear down, go Cubs go, and sell the team, Jerry.